Nice to see you all. It's been over 4 or 5 weeks since I actually joined you all. So we have new faces here. Great to see you. And thank you very much, Prabhu, for... I think this is the only time whenever I come, we can literally relax, and you can go to any deeper length, whether it could be a thought process or whether it's a journey. It's unlimited, and it's up to each individual's consciousness where we can actually travel to. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for that. So today's topic I have chosen is consciousness, the missing link. Om Agnanatimmirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Has anyone heard about the redwood forest trees or mere woods? Okay. So so before we actually go deeper into the topic of the consciousness, the missing link, just begin with networking from the perspective of the nature. So these redwood trees are some of the largest trees. One might say there's so many Himalayas and different forests. But it is said that this particular forest has got massive, huge, humongous trees. And they grow so tall and so powerful, so huge, and they're standing for over hundreds and thousands of years. And it is said that even when you walk over the path of this redwood forest, we cannot even see the sun actually passing through the trees and coming down to the forest. So it's very dense. And the park ranger actually of the forest tries to explain the underground secret of these redwood trees. And he starts asking some questions and opening up some open-ended questions, and he says that these trees are standing here in this forest for thousands and thousands of years, surviving with severe storms, winds, snowstorms, we call tsunamis, earthquakes, and yet they are growing bigger and bigger, taller and taller, heavier than heavier. So how is this possible? Even at this forest particularly, the soil is very loose, and it's in a hilly region, a hilly area. Usually the trees need they grow the roots very deeper underground. So the forest ranger asked this group of people, so how are these trees withstanding despite so many storms and earthquakes? Any wild guesses? The roots are connected.
Very deep.
There?
Yeah, very strong roots.
The very strong roots, yes, okay.
Very deep.
That's the normal trees which they go very deeper and deeper and deeper. But there is actually a speciality about these particular redwood trees. So do you want to know the secret?
Yeah.
And it's really, amazing actually when I heard. So the secret is that the roots of the redwood trees, they don't grow deeper, but they grow underground and they spread to all the directions. And every time they spread, whether it is to the right, left, front, back, they go and attach to the other redwood trees' roots. And every time they come in contact with this other redwood trees' roots, they intertwine, kind of very powerful. And then they make a permanent bond between them by interlocking. So every time they go, they spread, they are connecting, and every time they meet the other roots, they interlock. So this means, so every time when they get interlocked, their bond actually gets more deeper and deeper. And even the baby trees, the roots, when they get in touch with the giant, the parents, grandparents, they get a, very deeper connection. So, in this way, practically every tree in the forest is interconnected. So their unity is their strength. So even through the adversities or the storms of the earthquakes or any kind of disasters, they hold each other, even though they do not grow deeper and deeper. And this is the nature's lesson of networking with the consciousness. United we stand, divided we fall. So how is this connected to our lives? In our lives, if we compare, our hearts are like our roots. And when the roots of our care, our concern, and our affection actually connects with each other. Do you all agree? So like the roots of the redwood trees, they develop this connection. We can also connect that relationship with each and everyone in this world. Even when the storm of temptations, which always arise in everyone's life, individually, family, the storm of, fear, the storm of reversals and challenges, we come across these kind of things every single day, every single hour. But when we connect with each other, that makes us that bond, and that is effectively a spiritual principle. And this is what actually the world needs currently. There is a very, beautiful verse, taken from the Vedic text, which nicely connects to this particular things which we are discussing. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastine Sunicheva swapakecha pandita samadarshina. This is actually quoted in Sanskrit. So we'll try to understand what exactly it means. So real wisdom is not what we accumulate lots of data within our brains. It's not the real wisdom. The real wisdom is not how many degrees we actually acquire. And the real wisdom is not how many followers we actually increase, or in the media and everything, TikTok, Facebook. That's not the real wisdom. The real wisdom is to the extent to which we have the capacity to see every living entity with the equal vision. So whether it being a living being or a man, a woman, we see so many religions in day today, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, you call atheist, agnostic, there's so many names, we come across. Whether a person is coming from, traveling from east, west. Gita actually goes even deeper, whether it is an animal or whether it is an insect or a dog. Wherever there is life, life is sacred. So life is sacred. And when we understand that when our life is sacred, and when we understand this sacredness of others' lives, we can actually experience, no matter what the other living entities, whether it's a tree, a human being, an animal, or any kind of life, because there is a consciousness present in that living entity. So what is the nature of life? The wisdom text actually explains. In Sanskrit it is said that Najayate mriyate vakadachin nayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuyaha. This might be alien to most of you, but it's very interesting. These are really, really, really interesting. So the conscious force that we see through our eyes, the consciousness we hear through our ears, and the consciousness through thinking, which is through our mind, and the consciousness by loving through the heart, and that conscious force is actually divine. And it is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. It is indestructible. The body is constantly changing. The mind is also constantly changing. The witness of these changes is actually constant. And that witness is our true self. And what is so we've understood the nature of the life, which is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of bliss, full of knowledge. So other characteristics of this life or the consciousness is na hanyate hanyamane sharire. That means it cannot be cut into pieces. It cannot be burned by a fire. It cannot be withered by the wind, or it cannot be moistened, and it does not die when the body is actually dead. So what is actually that? That is the pure consciousness or the soul. So how do we get this particular body then? And when we try to understand from a material perspective, I'm sure everyone here drives different car. Some drives Mercedes. I think Leanne drives Bentley. Lamborghini, Porsche. What does I? Ford. You know, I've got a company car, I drive Volvo. It's not my car, by the way. So according to how much money one has, and according to the choices we make, we get a particular type of the body. Similar to what we make choices, whether I want to have this car, that car. So the Vedic wisdom actually explains that according to the choices we make and according to what we invest in, what is is karma. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. We get a particular type of body, and there are many types of bodies. Like Volvo, like Mercedes, Benz, Ford. So there are many, and with these bodies, we come across many differences. It could be different lifestyles, religions, beliefs, languages, rituals, how I look, how you look, different appearances. So, how do we understand that unity within the diversity, like the trees of the redwood forest, they bound. So how do we understand that unity within the diversity? It is the secret of actually finding the peace and being an instrument of peace in others' life. And that Atma, that living force, is the true self. If we compare ourselves with other living entities, we are very fortunate because we have a variety or a vast capacity of free will. Every living being on this material existence is programmed. If you take an example of a cow, the cow only grazes the grass. The cow will not go and devour a cat. So similarly, a tiger will not go and graze grass. It goes and tries to have a cat or whatever animal. So similarly, human being, the difference between the animals and the other living entities and us is we have a variety of free will. So with that free will, we can become a saint, or we can become a serial killer, or we can become a well-wisher of everyone. We can also become an enemy. Having, all these 6 impurities: anger, greed, lust, envy, pride, and jealousy. So with this power of will, free will, yes, we have the choice. But with this free will, we also comes the responsibility. The Bible says, as you sow, so shall you reap. Similarly, the Vedic text explains as laws of karma. For every action, there is equal and a corresponding reaction. But the soul or the Atma is beyond all these things. But due to the ego, or what we call ahankara, most of the time, we identify ourselves with the temporary nature of the body. And that is the missing point. Rather than thinking that I am within the body, we are actually identifying ourselves with the body. And this, with the temporary nature, we are deeply affected by every situation. There is actually a very profound story which gives, deep knowledge and teachings of attachment, grief, and spiritual realization. When I was actually in studying in my school back in India, my brother used to share these stories from this ancient Vedic text. And this particular story, when he was sharing, when I was he used to share when I was a student, I never understood the essence of that particular story. So this is a story where, many years ago, and this is a real story actually, there was a king called, Citraketu, or we can name as CK. And this king was very powerful. He had accumulated lots of wealth. He had many wives. But the only thing he was missing was he never had a child for his entire life to that point. And with that only thing or situation, he was really, kind of in a sorrow. So he approaches a sage. And then, the sage comes. The sage is very powerful. And with his mystic powers, he offers certain, medicine. And then he says that offer this to your wives. And then one of your wife will conceive a child. But he also wants that this child will give you joy. This child will also give you sorrow. So after, a couple of years, this king, one of the queen gives a birth to a baby boy. The king gets so much attached, and he was happy, and he was only attached with the child and the wife, neglecting his duties, neglecting other wives, and he was so much attached. So seeing this, the other wives, the 6 anarthas, or we call impurities, anger, greed, lust, envy, pride and jealousy. Everyone has this to an extent on a scale of 1 to 10. It could be 1 or worst 10. So these queens got jealousy, and then they made a plan to poison the food of the child. And this is, expression, but this is happening in the world in this current moment, everywhere, to different degrees. So the child was fed this brilliant food, but poison inside. The child unknowingly eats and leaves the body. Now the king and the queen gets completely dejected. And then he realizes the words of the sage, that this body will give you joy and this body will give you sorrow. Now with that detachment and with that sorrowness, he again approaches the sage. The sage comes with his mystic powers, just for a temporary purpose to educate the king. He brings life in the child. But when the child comes alive, the child actually is in a surprise, and he is kind of bewildered to see everyone in front of him. And then the sage says, "These are your parents, you're back, glad you're back, and then your dad is so happy." And now the child asks the sage, "Which parents are these? I've been taking birth from many millions and millions of years." Because when we understand that we are this conscious, the soul, like we changing the car from one car to another, the soul similarly passing from one body to another. Now the question of the son is a valid question. Does it make sense? And this, when my brother, when I was childhood, yes, okay, this is all, we give all reasons. But when we get to the stage of parenting, and when we see the child, and when we actually reflect that, and when we see ourselves, this gray actually hair reminds me every single day. I still feel that I am still the same person. But the body is constantly changing. Even in this life, like now, I feel the same energy, same yang. So similarly, the boy asked this question, in which life are these parents? And with this question, CK, the king, was shocked. And he starts thinking, this is actually a wonderful question. And then the sage actually starts giving the knowledge from a perspective beyond the material life. There's actually a very deeper, story. We don't want to get so much deeper. But to give a gist, he understands that life is short, and the life passes. The soul takes different body according to choices or desires we have and what we invest in. With that question, actually, CK realizes, and he says, you can now leave. So the boy actually goes back. So it is an eye-opener to me, especially now. So coming back to the reality, we see so many, things, situations happening. Ralph Waldo Emerson actually, he's written, he's a great philosopher. So he said, the reason why the society lacks unity and it's broken is because the man has lost connection with himself or herself. And this is effectively the transcendental, universal principle to actually connect to the essence of who we really are. Srila Prabhupada, at the age of 69, he actually wanted to take this knowledge to throughout the world, and has impacted millions of lives' consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada actually explains that we all are originally pure consciousness. But due to our association with matter from time immemorial, our consciousness is now polluted. And with that polluted mind, we are trying to actually exploit the nature, but actually we are getting more and more entangled in these complexities. Because we are actually missing the point that we are constantly thinking that we are this body rather than I am within this body. So how do we keep our consciousness intact? Okay, we understand that the nature of the consciousness or Atma or the soul is Sat Chit Ananda. But how do we keep this consciousness intact? And that's where the process of, the A, B, C, D comes into existence. We've learned A, B, C, D. But what's A, B, C, D? Yeah. Association. Books. Chanting. D. Dancing and diet. Devotion and diet. Association is really, really important. When I was a child, I used to actually sit at the last bench. And imagine sitting at the last bench in the school or college, it's like you do every sorts of nonsense. And again, we might say, that's association, it's too early. But association is an association. So when we are actually with the like-minded people, the energy we get from the others and the energy we can share with others will help us become more positive rather than going towards the negative act. Children nowadays, smoking. If you take an example of smoking, it's just a general, I'm not pointing anyone, it's a general. On cigarette packets clearly mentioned, smoking kills. Do you all agree? But still, people actually enjoy. Why? It starts with the association. It might start with hobbies. But everyone wants to actually get rid of that. But still, due to many reasons, they are unable to. But when we connect with the right people, it's very easy. That's just an example of one thing, but there are so many examples. So association is very, very important. Next comes the books. Books are a great resource of knowledge. We might read the books from, material perspective. But there is beyond this material perspective as well. And I always remember, whether you have seen a picture where, it starts from your eye. It goes through your, you see the lid of the eye, and then it goes to the zoom to see your eye. then your face, then your body. Then when it zooms out, it goes from your house, then it goes to the country, state, country. And then when it goes from state, country, it goes to what? World. And when you go beyond the world, the earth actually looks a speck in the cosmic manifestation. If the earth is a speck in cosmic manifestation, what are we? And we constantly worry, we constantly fight, and all these 6 negative things comes into picture. So when we get the right knowledge from a scriptural point of view or from a wisdom point of view, we can try to understand and see what exactly it means. We actually have many books which I was actually influenced by a book called Science of Self-Realization, and that's one of the topmost book I always recommend to most of my clients. Today I actually took my client to this temple in Watford. He is such a charitable person, and he says, Lax, I really like the book cover, give me more. And he donated £1,000, literally. And then he took a full box of the book. So, the potency in these books is a kind of ocean. It's only how great we understand or connect. And that again, sometimes we don't understand from our perspective because our senses are limited. And we see from one perspective, but when we connect, when we associate with the people and when we read together, again it helps us. And C chants for chant. C chants start what C is for chanting. We can actually take maybe 5 minutes, 15 minutes of our day. How many of you actually spend half an hour for yourself? So it's very important, even 15 minutes a day. We can start. The technique of 5 minutes, 10 minutes also is so, it helps us. We don't have to spend hours and hours. Even you can start with 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 30 days. 10 minutes from second month. Or 15 minutes after 6 months. 30 minutes in 1 year. That's a significant change. So we can try and sit down and chant this, this great Vedic mantras, just to see what exactly, and again, this yoga meditation is a great, technique to understand, go beyond deeper. And finally, D, which is the dancing and the diet. I actually asked my client, what did you actually like? He said, dancing. Because dancing actually relieves the stress hormones from your body. Because you forget everything. Diet again is very, very important. Why? Because it is said that we are what we eat. When we eat the food in the mode of goodness, the body actually nourishes. So it's important we take the foods in the mode of goodness. So that's just a kind of process to understand or be intact with the consciousness. Yes, we understand, okay, we are soul, Atma, consciousness, but what's next? That's the process which we put, together and practice day in or day out, or maybe 1 month, 2 months. So thank you very much for bearing me. Any comments or any suggestions or anything if you have any questions, this is the time. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, that's a lovely class. You covered a lot. Going back to the soul and the mind, where is the character like the mind, and where does intelligence fit with that? intelligence is above the mind, I believe.
Yes.
And the soul is above it.
On the top, yeah. So we have the physical body, which is made up of the 5 gross elements, which is earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Okay. Above these 5 gross elements, we have this mind, intelligence, false ego. And above these 3 subtle nature of the body is the soul. And that's why when we think that when we associate with this mind or body, because they are constantly changing, the only thing which is constant is the witness, which is witnessing all the changes. And that witness is our soul, what we call, which is above the gross body, the subtle body, and the above subtle is this pure consciousness. Does it make sense? Anything? Thank you very much.